I'm now still on point 4 of this second lecture about Iraq. And I come to the second thing. The first one was just cause. The second thing is access. And during the Vietnam War, you'll remember the press was given unfettered access to the battlefield, not just to the war zones, but also to troops, to be able to talk and live with the troops and so on. And this becomes probably the most covered war by professional media that we will ever see. Certainly, I don't expect to see anything like it again in my lifetime. Because many military felt that the media was crucial to them losing the war in Vietnam and losing to the public at home, they determined that this would never happen again. And we've already seen this in 1991 with the pools, right, with the news pools or the press pools. So in both Gulf Wars 1 and 2, that is 1, 1991, and 2, 2002 to 2011, well, 2000 depends on how you count what the Gulf is. I sort of split the difference there. But if we say that Iraq, 2003 to 2011, the media was very tightly controlled. And that actually goes for Afghanistan too. In 1991, remember the reporters were kept in rear areas. Once their fighting was finished, they were put into these pools, which was this lottery system. They were put on buses. They were bussed out to various different sites that the Pentagon and the State Department agreed they could see. They might not be allowed off the buses. They were allowed to take pictures maybe or film. The film was often seized by the State Department. We were like, well, we'll give this back to you if we like it. And in 2001 and 2002, the military liked the control that it had of the news that got back to the States in 1991. Remember the impact of the Naira incubator story. So to forestall the same kind of outcry from the 1991 war, it hit on the embedded system. Now, realistically, this had been going on already, but the idea is that they designated specific reporters to military units with which they had lived and traveled, and by whom they were protected. So what that means is you're a reporter for CBS. We'll take you and your camera person and a sound person, and we'll put you in the field with the 25th Infantry as they march up on Baghdad. Okay, great. And so off you go. And these are the people who are responsible for keeping you alive. So after a couple of days, you're like, oh, you guys are heroes. I mean, you're doing an amazing job. And they're like, oh, thank you, sir. That's very nice of you to say. You didn't have to say that. It's like, no, it's okay. I want to say it because you're scared for your life. So you start to look around at the people who are around you, and they see they're young, and they're mostly don't have a lot of education because they're mostly from the lower classes, which is typically where the Army gets its people from, the militaries in general, but especially the Army. The Navy, no. Well, the Naval Air Force, no. The Air Force, no, because both the Naval Air Force, all the Air Forces, can require the most education, because you have to actually know math, you actually have to understand what it is to fly, and you have to know the physics, and you have to be able to understand that stuff. So you can require, the Naval Air Force and the Army Air Force, the Air Force, require can require the highest levels of education, and they can get it, and they can say to people, no, we're going to take in, say, I don't know, 3,000 pilots this year. We've got 80,000 people to choose from, so why should we take you? No, not going to happen. Go to the Army. And the Army's like, yeah, we'll take you. So I have a couple of cartoons for you here, believe it or not. And so here we have Doonesbury's long-serving military man, BD, who starts off as he's a quarterback for Yale in the early days, and then he signs up to go to Vietnam to get out of writing a term paper because he can't face the idea of writing a term paper. He doesn't know what to write about. So he goes to Vietnam, and of course he comes home a war hero. And then he serves, is very useful as a character, he serves in all the military engagements the United States is in. He goes to Grenada, he goes to the Gulf War, and so on. At this point, he's giving out pool assignments. So here he is, and he says, NBC News will be riding with the 1st Brigade Sappers, so basically, if Please bear in mind that pending further development, some of you may be shifted to another theater of operations. Like, well, like what? It's like, well, somewhere where there isn't war. And this actually is something the military could do. If they didn't like the stories you were writing, they just move you. Goodbye. Bring somebody else in. So it didn't take long at all for the journalist to figure out that what they were writing and whether or not they were comfortable or welcome in the unit was completely connected. So, we sure got the story, right, from these embedded reporters. And so here's the two friends of Ray appears in Ray is the other guy in the second strip. He says, "War creates bonds with our media friends. Shouldn't be long before the Stockholm syndrome kicks in. Yeah. Captain, would you describe your outfit as magnificent or mythic? Report it as you see it here. Your outfit doesn't mean what you're dressed in, but the outfit, the military outfit, which is they're called. So what outfit are you men with?" So the Stockholm syndrome here refers to the realization in a number of hostage takings in the 70s that there was a strange relationship between hostages and their hostage takers over a long hostage period. That initially the hostage is frightened and angry, tries to escape, resists, and so on, and then is beaten down, basically gets exhausted, feels sick and is terrified and so on. And at a certain point begins to identify with the captor, with the person who's taken you hostage. And this is what's supposed to have happened with Patty Hearst during the Patty Hearst hostage taking by the Syrian and Lebanese Liberation Army. The Syrian Lebanese Liberation Army, the SLA, which is in 1973. I cannot remember. I think 73, where Patty Hearst was sort of this, the granddaughter of the Hearst money. And then the next time she shows up, she's posing with an automatic weapon against the background of the SLA freedom fighters flag. It's like, okay. So she was considered, basically the idea is that there's an agreement, there comes to, you start to listen to the captor, and the captor starts to sort of treat you like a human being, and you begin to see them like a human being, and then you kind of become close because you're jammed up and you begin to be sympathetic to their cause. Unless, of course, they're torturing you. So you'll see this concept in most clearly, actually, in Money Heist, which is this very popular Spanish series on Netflix, where one of the women who works in the bank is taken captive and falls seriously in love with one of the, I suppose he's supposed to be cute, captors. Anyway, that's the Stockholm Syndrome. Here's a little clip from Dirty Wars, which is about embedding. And that's really all you need to know. It's a little documentary.
Yeah, I mean, security, it's sort of a calculated risk everywhere you go, and you make different sort of arrangements depending on where you are. I mean, the thing is that, when you're an embedded reporter, and I've embedded as well, everything is made very easy for you. You land at Kabul or in Baghdad, and you're picked up by an armored convoy, and you're protected and housed and fed for free by the military. And every morning you wake up, and a public affairs officer presents you with 3 possible stories you could do that day, and photos and video clips and sound bites from them all. And you can actually just you don't even really need to leave your forward operating base, and you can regularly file stories for absolutely nothing for as long as you want, basically. Once you leave, once you unembed yourself, then you're feeling out the edges of what's possible every day. But you have to, because that's where the war is. I mean, I think the stories of American soldiers are incredibly important and valuable, and they're necessary. But they're a tiny fraction of the story of what the war is. I mean, the soldiers aren't the casualties of war anymore. I mean, if you compare the number of soldiers who are killed, the number of civilians are injured in Iraq or Afghanistan, it's just overwhelming. So you have to unembed. In Afghanistan, the way to do it is to try to fly under the radar. you dress in local clothes, grow a long beard, drive in a beat-up Toyota, don't go anywhere you can't return before sunset from, and stay off some roads and sort of talk to people to try to figure out what's the safest and what's possible, what's not. We get that calculation wrong all the time. I mean, you see in the film how we get stuck out. Hiding out in a place by the side of the road, waiting for sunrise so we can go back into Kabul. In Somalia, we rolled around with 12 armed guys with PKMs in the back of a pickup truck, and motorcycle outriders, and a decoy car, and a guy with an intelligence network around the city who would know at every checkpoint if people were moving and would move us off the street if it's.
And I thought my commute was hard.